Welcome to the Power Lunch Live on LinkedIn. I'm Rhett Power, your host. We do this program every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Hitting the program off a little late today with some technical difficulties, but that is just the way the technology gods are sometimes. The point of the program is to talk to today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, CEOs, people who are doing amazing work in the world that we can learn from. So that's the whole point of the show. Now, you can learn from them one of the ways is if you ask questions. So please do interact with us here online, either during the program or after on LinkedIn or any of the other platforms that we broadcast on, which happens to be Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and all those others. So make sure that you interact with us so that we can get to the questions that you want answered. And my guests are more than willing to do that. If we don't get to your question during the program, make sure that you ask after. Now, as I said, we do broadcast on all those other platforms with the help of Social Live, which helps make it all possible. If you love the program, give it a like or share so that your network can benefit from these conversations, and we can grow our audience. That's the other reason that it's nice. Today, I've got Kristen Ruby. She's the CEO of the Ruby Media Group. It's a full-service PR and social media agency based in New York City. Now, I consider Kris a social media guru, someone we should all listen to and watch out for. She's on Fox, CNBC. She's been on Good Morning America, the Today Show. She is actually everywhere these days. Kris, Ruby, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You're welcome. It's been someone I wanted to talk to for a bit. So what is, today I want to talk a little bit about, and I know that we're going to have a back and forth on a bunch of different topics, but I want to talk about the importance of CEOs and founders really having a strategy to promote themselves. And I know that that's sort of some people consider that sort of a dirty word, self-promotion. But I think it's essential today, and to do it right, you have to have a strategy. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think people want to know who they're doing business with today, right? So the old days are definitely behind us of this corporate sort of stodgy branding strategy where you have a bunch of people in a room that are creating the strategy for an executive that are super far removed from what that executive is actually putting out directly. Mm-hmm. And so I think what's changed a lot is that because of social media and the rise of social media, right, the executive now has a microphone, or the CEO has a microphone to be able to put out those messages directly. And so that's a blessing, also a curse, because if you don't have a strategy, you can also shoot yourself in the foot with what you're putting out. So for example, are you self-promoting or doing too much and posting 10 times a day, right? I think that can hurt you in the long run if there is no strategy. I'd rather see a CEO put out 3 great pieces of content per month rather than something every single day and, kill their engagement with it. So I think you really do need to have a strategy with what you're putting out, why are you putting it out, and you need to understand who you're talking to when you're doing it.
Is there, to me, it seems like, if I'm the CEO or the co-founder or whatever, one of the leaders, building my personal brand can actually help the company too.
Oh, of course it can help. So I think that, I work with a lot of experts so I think there's a few, let's just having a conversation about PR. I think there's this old way of doing PR, right? Where the company could come to you and say, we want PR for our company. And then you build a strategy around that. And it's more of a traditional PR strategy. Today, if someone comes to me and says, we want PR for our company, I say, who is the CEO? Are they media trained? And who is going to be the face of this brand? Like, give me someone to work with that I can then be putting out on behalf of the company to get quoted, in different media outlets. So I think that's really definitely changed a lot. And so to your point, I completely agree with what you're saying, that you need that person that's going to be the face of the brand, and then that will help them get more press. Said so-and-so of X company. That's what we specialize in doing, plugging in experts to be that person for their firm.
What is that? You talked about how you'd rather see somebody put out really good content 3 times a month as opposed to every day. What does that mean? I mean, and in practicality, what does that look like? And if I'm the CEO or the person that's hired you to come in and sort of help me build my brand and my thought leadership, what does that really look like?
So here's my secret for that.
Is it video? Is it what is it?
I think so. To answer that part, it depends on how that CEO shines, right? If they shine in video, then they should be doing video. But if they're not good on camera, then I think the written word or long form content makes a lot more sense for them. So you should really do whatever medium is best for you and where you're most comfortable with. But my secret for this is that it's not just about checking off a box every day and saying, oh, you know, I clicked post. I did social media for the day because some social media expert told me I have to do this every day. It's done, right? Because that's not helpful. So what I think about, and what I want people to think about before they do this, is to say, if I could write something, if I could write a message right now to, you know, the 5 prospects I'm going after, what would that message say? What do I actually want them to know? Like if they're ignoring my emails, like what is that? What do I want them to see? And that's the part that I actually think like 90% of people like just skip out on. They just skip past, right? If we just spent a few more minutes thinking about that, we could be writing content that is actually helpful and educates people and reaches the people that you're trying to reach that may be ignoring you. So I think that, you know, is a very critical part of figuring out what your strategy is. It's not just saying I did social media to do it. It's figuring out who am I trying to talk to, what am I trying to say, and where can I find those people?
What is to you, you know, you hear a lot of authenticity or being authentic, and what does that mean? I mean, because I see a lot of people who are talking about being authentic, but it seems very contrived to me.
Have you seen, there's actually this LinkedIn account. I have to show, there's this like a Twitter account which makes fun of people on LinkedIn. Have you seen this? Where it takes people, it takes exactly what you're talking about. And it's like this spoof on like, you know, LinkedIn, quote unquote, authenticity, where it's basically, they take these things, these long drawn out like narratives and monologues that people write on LinkedIn, where they're supposedly being authentic. And it's calling them out because it's literally saying this is not authentic, right? It's saying we can tell you're really trying hard to be authentic, but we see through it and it's not authentic. So what happens is it's the opposite of authenticity, and people can tell, and then they call them out on Twitter. And so I think that if you're trying really hard to be authentic, you're not being authentic. I think the real tell of vulnerability or authenticity is when you write something and you think, oh, maybe I should delete that because I feel like raw, like I feel like maybe, you know, that was too personal. Like that's when you kind of know, and people can tell.
To me, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was trying to write an article about it, and I got kind of stuck on it. But to me, it seems like if you're genuinely trying to help solve a problem, right, then that to me is authentic. I don't think it has to be. I don't think you have to tell your life story and all your trials and troubles and all that to be authentic. I think you're trying to use your experience and your knowledge to help someone. When you talked about, you know, writing to or doing your content to those 5 customers or those 6 customers or 10 customers that you really want to reach, that to me is the answer.
Yeah. And so you bring up a good point, right? Because I think most people forget the problem they're trying to solve. I think when you're doing something and you've been doing it a long time and you ask that person, what problem are you trying to solve? Like they just give you a blank stare because they actually may not know anymore. Because when they started their company, the problem they tried to solve then may not be the problem they're trying to solve now. And so you need to really sort of take a step back and look at that before doing that. And also when a prospect comes to us, you know, when they say, oh, I'm interested in PR, and I go, what problem are you trying to solve? A lot of times they don't have an answer. They're like, what do you mean what problem are you trying to solve? And I say, well, you called me, you must have a problem. If there's not a specific problem, no one's really going to be motivated to follow through on any of that work that you're doing.
You can't really do anything if there's not a problem, right? You can't. You don't have a job if there's not a problem.
Correct. I always say, you know, ego-driven PR is not a sustainable PR strategy, right? Because sometimes people say, oh, I saw so-and-so on TV, so I want to be on TV. Or this other person, my competitor is doing this, so therefore I want to do this. But what is the problem? I mean, let's dissect the problem there. I'm not sure that is there a problem?
That they're not on TV. That's the problem.
Yeah, but it's not
I know,
that, and it's not,
I know.
when I say it's not, there's got to be a deep enough challenge that we can solve. So, which is why I want to talk to you a little bit about PR.
That's right. Turn it around.
We're on both sides here. I find it really
Right.
fascinating. So let's talk about like good pitches versus bad pitches, and you know, tell me, what you deal with a lot of PR companies all the time. You're getting pitched.
I'll say this. I think I probably get 10 pitches a day, right? And I get them in two different ways. I get them for the show, but I get them for Forbes or Inc. or one of the other publications I write for. And or I get pitches to because I have influence. Will you buy this, or will you test this, or will you write about this? I get a lot of people want on those platforms. They want me to write about them on those platforms, right?
Okay.
And it's often it's a cold outreach. There's been no effort to build a relationship with me, right? And to understand, and often I can tell it's an email they sent to, 50 other people probably, right? And so with no idea, is this content that I write about? So 90% of them go out the window because it's not something I write about. I don't write about cars. I don't write about, food products. There are a lot of things that don't interest me. So I don't write about them.
And these are emails from PR firms, or just
from PR firms, or from individuals, or,
That's cringeworthy, by the way, that a PR firm would be sending you that, because it's their job to research what you write about.
Yeah. No,
right?
that's, yeah. But somebody said to some junior associate, get the client placed in Forbes, right?
Yeah.
And so they're going to every Forbes contributor and sending an email, right? Because they have to do it yesterday, hoping somebody is going to bite on this pitch. Sorry. So that's that. But then the other thing is then you'll get somebody who might catch my attention. And the story is interesting, but again, why would I do somebody a favor? Why would I work with somebody when, even if their story is compelling, they haven't done anything to help facilitate a relationship. And I that's the other thing. You and I have been working together on some other clients for a while. And you clearly knew who I was targeting and who my audience was and right. And so your pitches were compelling and interesting, and your guests were good. Right. So anytime I got a pitch from you now, I would certainly look at it. Right. Because you did your homework, and you did really well putting the guests in front of me that were appropriate for the audience. And so to me, I'd rather work with somebody that's focused on the relationship and build a relationship. I had somebody that was a really good pitch that reached out in December. I finally talked to her yesterday because of the holidays. I was gone, and we talked. And just like you, she provided a couple guests that were spot on. So I'm happy to listen to those kind of pitches. Understanding too that the other thing I think is important is understanding, okay, Rhett does a show. He also writes for these publications. Maybe because we know that those shows need guests, maybe if I ask if he'll take this person on as a guest, then maybe he'll write an article about them if that's our end goal, right? We want an Inc. placement, or we want a Forbes placement, but let me get him on the show, because that's probably an easier pitch to Rhett, because he needs guests on that daily show, right? So just kind of understanding how all this works, I think, is really the key to getting at least getting through to me. And I know other contributors I talk to, same thing, right? Very, very few people get it right.
Really? That's a powerful statement.
Yeah, I think very, very few people pitch me the right way that have ever gotten through.
What does that say about the PR industry?
It says a lot. Well, I'll tell you what it says from my experience on the other side of it, which is hiring someone to do it. When I was running the toy company, when I was running my toy company and running the gift company, we paid for a lot of PR that I think, if I had known what I know now, I wouldn't have bothered, because with hiring somebody that I could have hired somebody, right, taught them how to do this, and gotten the same story placements and the same ad placements and the same stuff that I got by hiring an expensive PR firm. I know that now, but we wasted a lot of money on stuff that I think shouldn't have wasted money on.
So then what's the difference though of what's a good, when you're spending money on PR, what would you say is a good use of it versus a waste?
I'm all for it. Okay. Because I think that there's a lot of value in having somebody like yourself, or an industry specific firm, help you and guide you and help you create the strategy and understand the market and get better placement. There is a value in that. But if you don't know that, if you don't understand what you need, and I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, at least the ones I work with and coach, are like what you said. They don't understand the problem. They don't understand what they need. And so they're relying on a firm that maybe they didn't ask all the right questions. Maybe they I think that happens a lot, is that you hire somebody and you just sort of check out, right? Oh, they're going to handle the PR. They're going to handle the strat, right? And I think I think that's what happens, right? Oh, they're in charge of the PR. They're going to get me social media. They're going to help me, become an influencer. And that's just not how it happens.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, right? They go, oh, I didn't know how much time this was going to be. This is so time intensive. You didn't tell me. Well, who did you think was going to write the content, right? You're the expert. You can't, that expertise is not transferable. You have to, and a lot of people say, well, what sort of obligations are going to be placed on me? How much time? I say at least an hour of your time a day, because I always say, we can't make you famous. You either you have that subject matter expertise. It's our job to help shine a light on that and put that in the right places online. But we can't create that for you. You have to have already created that on your own. So I think that's a very important piece of this as well. I think so many things that you've said are great. Having that expertise within a niche in PR is very, very important, right? And so there's a difference between a PR person who is a generalist versus a specialist. And so if you're in the tech space, you probably want someone who really specializes in PR and tech. Same thing with entrepreneurship, or, right now I do a lot of two main areas, PR and medical, and PR and, for entrepreneurs. Those are, I have a, 12 plus years experience in each of those areas. It's not the same thing. So if someone comes to me right now and says, I want you to do PR for my band or something, I go, I'm not really an expert in that. I don't think I can help you. Those aren't relationships I have. And I think the onus is on public relations professionals to say that, and not just take on anything because someone comes to them, but take on the things that they know that they can do well in. And, as far as the story of our pitches or working with you, I'll tell you, it's so funny because it's really just organic. I didn't set out to do anything. I think what I saw is that I like to connect the experts I have with reporters or producers or people who are working on something and have a need, who are already doing something. It's a difference of proactive versus reactive PR.
Right.
I specialize in reactive PR, where someone says, so at the time you were working on something, and I thought, oh, I have an expert that I can plug into this where they would be a good person for that story. And then after I said that, I said, wait a second, actually, this is an interesting angle and that can make for a good guest on his show. Literally, that's how that happened. It wasn't that I set out to write a pitch and figure out how I can maneuver my way in to get someone on your show or in your story. And I think like there really is a difference in PR of both ways that I'm referring to. Mm-hmm. And I think when you do it, when you're actually really just focused on how can I help this person, give them the expert they need or the source they need or the quote that they want, versus how can I achieve my client's agenda regardless of the agenda of that reporter. And I think people can tell the difference.
Absolutely. No, that's, you nailed it, because yours was a totally different approach. Instead of, hey, it drives me crazy. The opening line is, hey, we want our guy in Forbes. Will you do it?
Yeah, but why would you do it? And why would you care if they want, right? It doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous. And I laugh at this too, because I'll tell you, so I was a columnist for a publication for about 2 years. So I've been on both sides of this, and I receive these things. So I can shoot, because I would say, oh my God, these people are paying companies, and this is the quality of what they're sending me. I was mortified. As a PR person, and on the other side, I was I can't believe and then, by the way, when I'd respond, and then they'd ghost me. And I'd be I'm actually going to include, have you ever had that happen? When you actually get back to someone and you're going to include them and then they're gone, has it happened to you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you're wait, what? What is going on here? You work hard. How could you don't know if it's the PR firm's fault or if it's their client's fault, but then you're what's?
Well, no, I had a guest booked last week, right? We booked it 2 months ago, a month and a half ago. I reached out a week before, nothing. A couple days before, nothing. It's you spent all that time getting me to book your guy, and nothing.
And they ghosted. Wait, they ghosted you?
They ghosted me.
Wait, yeah. The PR firm ghosted you?
Oh yeah.
That's so. Oh my. And then nothing. You just never heard from them again.
No.
So you booked the person, and they were just gone.
Yep, gone.
And you know what? You're probably going to hear from them. I think you're going to hear from them 6 months from now when they have another client, and they're going to be hey, can you book me? And you're going to be you know what I'm talking about, right? That's what they're going to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And this is why PR gets, a bad reputation, because of things like this.
Well, I want to go back to something you said. I did appreciate, I had a great experience with, after the first couple people that we hired, we did finally figure out in our thick heads that going with somebody industry specific was the best way. And that did change. The results out of that were just spectacular and gave us a whole much better understanding of really where we needed to advertise, where we needed to place our money. And it was before social media blew up like it is now. And I think that would have complicated it maybe a little bit more. But, I think industry specific is smart. That'd be the thing I would say.
I want to talk about just in terms of your audience and strategies for people learning. One of the things I did with you, we had a guest, right? And there was a topic. And so one of the things I did is I did a lot of background research into that topic and shared with you what I found. Did you find that helpful? Is that something that you would want other people to do with you? Just in terms of nuggets of wisdom for people? Do you like that approach?
I did. Those were useful. I tend to, on this program, because we end up having 45-minute conversations and it's not a one or two question and be done. And so we have a chance to go really pretty deep into things. I tend to do a fairly deep dive into that person, and I always discover something else I want to ask, right? There's always some surprises that come out of that research. But I think it's a starting point, and particularly if they have a book or they have something going on that's new and has to be talked about, that's very helpful. I've had some guests that even had questions that they wanted to send me, and that's fine. But any of that kind of stuff is helpful, particularly if there's something that they really want to say. If they've got a real specific message, that's always a good guide. Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering.
Yeah. No, that is. Do you think what platforms or you think are working today, social media wise?
You mean for public relations or?
Yeah, for professionals, people who want to, like a corporate leader or CEO, founder.
So I think all CEOs need to be on Twitter if you're doing a public relations campaign. And I think like that's the
Really?
number one platform that no one like ever thinks about 100%. Because for example, if they're doing an interview, I need to make sure that they're sharing that interview on all of the other platforms. And most journalists are really on Twitter first and foremost, right? And so I want to make sure that that journalist is getting visibility for the work that they're doing. And it's important that the clients create platforms or channels on each of the main ones right now, right? So there's, I would say LinkedIn and Twitter, and definitely having a Facebook fan page for that brand is critical. I would say long form content on their own website, under the owned umbrella is going to be really important for them to have.
Okay.
And just, from an SEO perspective, but also from a thought leadership perspective. One thing that I explain to people is there can be a problem. And if you look at it like a chart, like a graph, if you work with a PR firm and as you just look at it sort of linear, like going up like that of all the press hits you get, but the content that you're putting out doesn't match the amount of press that you're getting, that's a storm, that's a problem. Because what that looks like is that you're just getting a lot of press, but you don't actually have the expertise and the thought leadership behind that press. So what I really want people to understand is press is great, but you need to be doing your part to put out content that supports the amount of press that you're getting. Or else it just looks like you have a PR firm that did a great job of getting you a bunch of press, but are you an actual thought leader in this space? And so I think that you want to sort of see both things going up together rather than just press, but your thought leadership is nowhere. And I think the best way you can do that is through things like podcasting or putting out your own long form content. And I think actually most people don't do that. I think it's like this area that they really sort of skip, and it's very obvious because if you look at their site, you'll see that that they do interviews, but they're not putting as much time into their own thought leadership content. And I think that reporters or journalists or producers want to see that versus looking at other interviews that they've done.
Really? Because I'm just looking at my own stuff, and that makes me think. Okay, I've been writing for Inc. and Forbes and things for 5 or 6, 7 years. I've probably got 600 or 700 articles on Inc. alone. That doesn't translate though into like bookings for TV. And why is that? What do you think? Why?
So you're saying how come your content isn't translating to bookings for TV? Well, probably because no one's pitching you for TV, right? So I really think in order for things to translate for bookings for TV, you need someone who's pitching you all the time, and you have to be writing about things that like, are you writing about like Iran? Are you writing about Trump? Like, I don't think you are, right?
No.
Yeah. So like, I think are you writing about Meghan Markle?
No, but I write about leadership and I write about all those things. I mean, and so I'm not writing about pop news or, news like that. I write about leadership, and, I just wrote about yesterday, for example, I wrote a story on Patagonia and Coca-Cola and a couple other companies that are doing really well at secondary, like Patagonia, for example. They just opened that new store in Denver for all of their secondhand clothes, right? People turn in their old Patagonia pullover and they get a credit, for a new. So, some things like I write about business is what I write about.
So yeah, I definitely think there's, I think we'd have to, like, if you were looking to get on TV, we'd take that and translate it to what's happening in the news right now and position you as an expert who's available for commentary. And then I'd include relevant links, but we'd have to tweak probably some of what you've written in order to work with the angles or the narrative that's in,
okay. I mean, because I do tweets when I post something on LinkedIn or Inc. or Forbes, that all gets tweeted, but I don't see I get more play out of that on LinkedIn when I retweet when I post those on LinkedIn versus really any mileage I get out of it on Twitter. When Inc. retweets it or Forbes retweets it, then they get, they've got 1 million followers or so they get some mileage. But I mean, I haven't seen as much benefit out of Twitter for me. But I understand what you're saying. You're saying it's a different audience, right? I should be focusing on LinkedIn with the business audience, Twitter, go after the media with that content, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you were writing about like Prince Harry's leadership right now, or the Queen's leadership, or something like that, and I was doing PR, I would say, okay, give me this link, and then not only would you tweet it, but I'd also be sending that link to producers. I wouldn't just rely on, you know what I mean? That's just one portal, but I'd also make sure they're getting it via their email. So I would do both. It's all of these things sort of working together, and I think that's where the PR strategy component definitely comes in.
I think one of the things I think in working with my clients in coaching and in consulting is to make people understand this is sort of a long game too, isn't it? It's not.
Yes, it is.
It's not you're not going to build thought leadership, or you're not going to build that kind of credibility. You're not going to just go on Fox and Friends or Fox Business or CNN. You're not going to go on that one time and all of a sudden, life's going to change, or your thought leadership will change, right? I've
been on Fox, over 100 times now. And I continue to do it. I keep showing up. If they ask me to do it, I say yes. Like, that's what I try and explain to people. You have to, and I started out doing local TV, on like Sunday mornings, like somewhere like upstate. I'd wake up at like 3 a.m. and do that like for 5 years before I ever did a national show. I think people need to understand that. Like, it's not just that like you show up to a national TV station and say, I've arrived. Book me. It doesn't work that way unless you have, like, I guess, the most amazing publicist. But even then, I just think that's not the world that we're in. Like, you have to sort of cut your teeth in these local channels, or even doing your own stuff online. And I think the world has really changed even from when I started, 10 or 12 years ago. I think there's a lot of opportunity right now with podcasts and digital streaming and digital stations, right? So for example, like, let's say you could do a TV segment or you could do a radio segment. You may not get links from either of that. So like, you're going to have to like hire a company to get you copies of what you're doing, versus something like this, what you and I are doing right now. This will live online.
Yeah.
So if that's what you're looking for, this is a great portal to do that. And I think that's where I think new media has a real advantage today over traditional forms of media.
Well, I think it also gives people practice, right? It gives you practice for the big stage. Like you said, you did local. I mean, I don't know how many podcasts I've done. I don't know how many like radio shows I've done, gazillions. But
I would,
get you comfortable doing it.
It does. I would also say it's very different. So I have there are some people that love doing TV interviews because they're 2 to 3 minutes, but doing a podcast is not like that. Speaking for an hour, I mean, you have to really stay focused. It's a very different type of interview. And so some people love podcasts, but wouldn't want to do TV, and then vice versa.
Mm-hmm. But fair enough. I think both are helpful, but
I agree. No, I agree with you. I think that's the goal.
Is TV the way to really catapult it still, or is it new media, you think? Or is TV really still really where you can catapult your visibility?
I think television is a great way to catapult your visibility, but I write about this as well, about this notion of CEO activism. And should CEOs sort of get involved in politics right now? And is that the right move for their company? And if you want to be on television, politics right now is going to be a part of that conversation 9 out of 10 times. So you need to sort of make that corporate PR strategy internally before you decide if you want to do TV. Like the old days of saying, like, I remember 10 years ago, I was like, on the couch of a national TV show talking about optical illusions. Like, do you think I'm going to, like, that was a Saturday morning on national TV. That's not going to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just not the world that we live in anymore. So everything is hard news, and it's politically driven all the time. So if you're okay with that as part of your strategy, then sure, do it. And it will definitely catapult you if you're open to it.
Is it smart to take a political bent on a business today?
So my personal opinion is is it smart to? It really depends. So if you have a company where like everyone is sort of behind you in that political point of view, And when you say that you are speaking on behalf of your employees, and it's a unified point of view, then sure, like then that's an accurate statement. But if you are sort of saying we all are in alignment when you're not in alignment on it, and then your employees feel massively uncomfortable working for you because you've just put something on them that they don't agree with, then no, that's not smart.
Okay.
Because I think it's a divided world out there. And I'll share the link in the comments on my thoughts on this one, because I do have a lot of opinions on that.
Well, I just wonder, the reason I ask you that is I wonder if the politics of today really, I mean, I'll backtrack here for a second. I remember when I first started a company, my mother-in-law, who's a longtime small business person, said never, in a small town, she said, I never ever will put a yard sign in my yard, a political, yard sign. I'll never ever put a sign in my shop window one way or the other. Right. I think everybody in town knew where she stood, but she never broadcast it for her in her business. And I wonder if today the political climate hasn't shifted in such a way that it almost forces people to take a side. I mean, what do you think?
I do think it does force people to take a side. And I think the other thing that's problematic when we're working with a CEO or trying to build up their brand is that a lot of times they think, oh, I'm putting it on a private Facebook or personal Facebook and no one can see it. Well, that's just simply not true, right? There's ways to see it, because if you have 800 friends, one friend could always screenshot it or share it. So right. Nothing is truly private anymore. But I also think that whether you agree with this or not, unfortunately, we live in a world where journalists or reporters, they do have their own political preferences. And they have political bias. So if I'm pitching someone, or if I'm working on trying to pitch someone, and then that they're looking at that person's Twitter or whatever it is and seeing that maybe they have political beliefs that are the opposite of what theirs are, that's going to impact their opinion possibly on if they want to write back to me or not.
Sure.
And I don't think people really think about that. Like, I think if you hire a PR firm and you're working hard and spending money to try and get out there, and then you're also, putting out these massive political statements, I think it can hurt what you're trying to do one way or unless you just want to be like super polarized in one way or the other, and that's the type of media you want, then fine, that makes sense.
Okay, fair enough. I don't disagree. What is the process you would go through to hire a publicist?
So the process.
What questions would you ask? What would you be looking for? I mean, is it connection? Is it somebody that gets what you're trying to do? What are if you were to reverse it, what do you think your clients, why do they hire you?
So I don't necessarily think it's, I think the old way is about connections. I think the new way is about, do you have the ability to sort of make new connections that make sense in that client's vertical? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, the old way is like this publicist would be sitting there with some magic Rolodex and going through it and calling those people. That doesn't exist anymore, right? Just like, I didn't have a, connection with you, and we built that connection over time organically, and then it just happened to work out that I had people that worked with what you're working on, so again, that is about, can that person ebb and flow, and can they move in where you need them to move to, where it makes sense. I think having that skill set is probably the most important skill set in PR. Can they plug in what you do into that sort of media conversation? You want to make sure if you have that, then that trumps all, I would say. So I would, if I were hiring or looking at a firm, I would the first question I would say is, are you a generalist or are you a specialist? If you're a specialist, what do you specialize in? And then, is there a sort of subspecialty within that? And I'd want to see, next I would say, can I see examples of other press placements you have secured for your other clients? I wouldn't necessarily ask to see references, because I think the reference is all of the press. Yes, I think the reference is the work. I think there's this antiquated notion, like I need to call other people that you've worked with and see. I don't really understand. Like that to me is more opinion based than factually driven of, did I drive result for this person, and what does my portfolio and body of work look like that you can find online or that I can put together for you, where you can see here's everything I got them. I'm a firm believer that it's not my client's job to sell for me. They're busy and I don't want to give out their information. I feel like there's privacy. Now, maybe some other people don't believe that and they're fine giving out their clients' information all day long. I personally don't want to do that. So I would say that, and then I would want to see an example of their writing, right? How does this person write? You have to be a good writer. You have to be able to clearly communicate new ideas and boil it down into.
Let me see a pitch letter. Let me see.
Yeah. And you know what's amazing is, like, again, this is this antiquated notion. Like if you ask most publicists, they go, you can't see my pitch. Like you can't see anything I write. This is proprietary. And I say, why? You know, I believe like that's part of a work for hire. Like, I don't think if I have a client and they just want to steal my connections or steal my pitches, then what I'm doing isn't valuable enough, because I believe it's so much more than that, right? Like if my clients want to try and reach out to you, are you going to write back to them? Probably not, right? Because our relationship is stronger than that. Like, go ahead, try. If they try, like I have strong enough relationship that like the media would just forward me that email and I would just laugh and be like, bye. Like we're not working together. Like if this is what you want to do, because it's all based on trust. Right. It's all based on trust. And the truth is, like, what are they going to do? Like pitch themselves and then just like look weird. The whole thing would just be a bad look. And they don't know how to write for them. I mean, most people don't know how to write for the media. They don't know how to boil things down in a way that makes sense and is helpful for them. Or they want to send every single idea that comes up with, or something that's super trade focused. And it's not necessarily like what your audience is going to be interested in, right? There's a skill to understanding the difference and navigating that. So,
well, and to knowing what, you know, I mean, you get updates on what people are looking for at a specific moment, right? And that's how you end up doing a lot of it, I imagine, is you know what that producer's looking for and whether you have a fit for it, right? I mean, that you're not pitching a producer something you know isn't going to work. So you're not going to waste your capital on that.
Correct. And I also think that as publicists, we need to push back on ideas that are presented to us. Not everything is worthy of a press release. In fact, I think almost nothing is worthy of a press release. I can't remember the last time I've written a release. I mean, do you do anything with press releases? Nothing, right? No. So like, what is someone's like, can we write a release on this? I'm like, why?
I hadn't done a press release in 15 years.
And what do you do with press releases when you receive them? Like throw them out or
I don't
put
even
them
look
into your trash? You don't even look. Exactly. So this is my point. If you have a client that goes, I want you to write a release on this, don't just say yes. Like push back and say no, because no one's using them and they're a waste of time. And so I think I call it actually like malpractice within public relations, where people don't understand what the field of PR is, and publicists want to keep clients happy. So they get these ridiculous sort of requests thrown at them, and they say yes to them, because they want to keep the client happy and give good customer service. Now, I think that my number one priority is keeping the media happy. If I can keep the media happy, I will be able to always keep clients happy that come or go. Clients come or go, but the media relationships won't. They will go, however, if I start doing ridiculous, amateur, rookie things that clients ask of me, which is why it's very important that you don't have a entry-level person or junior person or sort of intern pitching the media, because they don't know the difference, and they'll do those things because the client asked them to do it, and they'll do it.
Right.
Which is sort of like exactly what I think you were saying before, that, you know, you get these things because someone asked them to do it, and you're like, why am I receiving this?
Well, because they didn't want to be bothered to make the pitches themselves and really understand who, you know, instead of sending out 5 pitches and to really tailor an audience, you know, let me just broadcast it to my list, my mailing list. And
exactly. Oh, I hate, you know, I'm like probably the only person in PR that thinks this. Like, I feel like the word pitch is dirty, because I don't think about it as a pitch. I think about it like, what I sent you for that, like that just went to you. Was it a pitch? I don't know. Just an idea for you that I thought would work, and I didn't give it to anyone else. Like that, is that a pitch? I think it's like this notion of a pitch, I feel like is so sales driven. It feels sleazy to me, like it's something that goes to a list and to all these people. I think we should replace the word pitch with, you know, a personalized idea that makes sense for someone. right? Like,
the way it came across to me, and I mean, in all of our correspondence was, hey, I've got somebody that's going to be good for you.
yes.
You guys will connect, right? And Thomas and I do. You know, we hit it off. You know, great. You know, so I think that I mean, I get it. It didn't come across as a pitch. It came, hey friend, I've got somebody you might want to have on the show.
Exactly. Right. And so it's more of like, but that's why we need to replace this notion of like a traditional PR pitch with what you're referring to, where it actually is better and makes sense, because like, again, that's not like a quote unquote pitch that goes out to 10 other people. It's an idea that makes sense for you. That's a relationship and an expert that you can use. And that's what I think PR needs to evolve to, if it's going to survive.
How do you, set client expectations on what they're going to get? Like, because the way I've been pitched before, I remember, and thinking of it when I was a CEO, thinking of it this way: I've got to have for the retainer that I'm paying you, I've got to have, I had some arbitrary thing in my mind of how many placements I wanted a month. I mean, how do you handle that? Like,
so it's a great question. I'm very clear. Probably my first conversation with someone, and I say, how are you going to measure success of what we're doing? You know, is it number of books sold? Is it, number of press placements? What is it? And so or is it like increase in website traffic? Or if I hear like a bunch of marketing driven analytics, then I realize what they need is marketing and not PR. But if they want to measure what I'm doing by number of placements, then sure, like that makes sense. Or increase in brand awareness, I can deliver on that. And I tell them I can typically get around 3 to 4 press placements a month. But it's not, guaranteed. You could have a month, I guess, maybe with 0. I mean, I've luckily haven't delivered that, but technically you could, right? Because I can't promise that someone's going to write about you or feature you. I can do my best to make it happen. But if something is going on in the world or the news cycle that trumps whatever I'm saying, well, that's how it is. Right. And so we have a real problem right now where people are sort of sending out sales sheets, like you mentioned, saying for X $1,000, you can get written in XYZ publication.
Yeah, I see a lot of that.
And I just think like, this is not journalism. This is not PR. And certainly if you're working with me, I'm very clear that you can't be doing that on the side, because I don't believe in it. Ethically, I think it is not how I
get that stuff all the time. And even firms reaching out saying, hey, we'll pay you to do, I mean, like, there's no way. I mean, I'm not a journalist by any means, technically I'm a columnist, but that's just awful.
That's how I feel too. I do PR by the book in an old school way, at least in that regard, where that's not part of the conversation. And it can't be that you work with a publicist that practices like I do, but then you want to do that other stuff on the side because your SEO firm told you should do it. Right. This is the other problem where, at this point, I'm demanding exclusivity with services in this area, because what you have now is people hiring multiple firms at a time, or you have people hiring a PR firm and then a marketing firm, but then the marketing firm or an SEO side is telling them do this. And that can hurt what you're doing from a public relations standpoint. Let's say they do that and then someone blasts them. Well, there goes your PR campaign up in flames, because you decided that this great advice that another consultant told you that to do, like that's your PR. That's going to be your PR. When you're Googled, like that will be the story about you. So this is why it's very hard when you have so many cooks in the kitchen from a PR and marketing perspective. And I see that happening more and more now as the agency landscape changes. It's very, very important. When I started out, my PR contract was about 2 pages. Now I think it's 12. And people say, why do you need such a long contract? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because most people don't understand what they're hiring when they are hiring PR. I have something now that says client responsibilities, that says what your obligations are. That if failure delivery on the client side, meaning you have to participate in this process. We're not held responsible if you choose to hire a firm and then ghost us as a firm. That's on you. It's not on us. Right? It makes it very clear now up front, you have to participate in this process. You have to work with us. You have to give us things for this to work. And I think that more firms should sort of follow suit in that precedent that I'm trying to set with that. That way people aren't surprised. I mean, we have expectations written out in that. We have a scope of work attached to it. We have a timeline, and we have deliverables included in all of that. You know, I think more of that should be included so people know what they're getting.
What's the difference? That you brought that up, and I want to sort of be very clear about what that difference is. PR versus the marketing firm, because I think that term is really confusing sometimes to people. I know it is to clients I work with sometimes. So,
okay. So if the difference between PR and marketing, is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah. And in terms of like, if I'm hiring, you know, you hear marketing and PR lumped together quite often, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
I mean, and so for a small business person, or, you know, a leader here that's not a marketing focused leader, I think sometimes those departments, I mean, how many companies have marketing PR, you know, departments, right? And yes, to me, they're distinctly different things.
They are. Yeah. And I think that's a mistake sometimes, right? Because I think everyone thinks, oh, it's all going to be the same thing now. We're all going to come together. Really, it's not. And I think there's I'm so glad you brought this up, because I think there's such a double standard in this area, because as public relations professionals, a lot of times clients will sort of evaluate our work with marketing metrics, but you never hear of a marketing person being asked to evaluate their work by PR metrics. When's the last time you ever heard someone ask a direct marketer, how many national TV hits did you get us? 0. You never have heard that question, right? But from a PR, how many new clients did you bring us? How much new website traffic did this generate? How many books did you sell? Those are marketing metrics.
Right.
And we are asked that all the time as PR professionals, but marketers are never asked to evaluate their work by PR metrics. So to answer your question, PR is about brand visibility, media relations. It's very different than marketing. If you want to hire a marketing firm, they're going to help you sort of with more boots on the ground, maybe pay-per-click, or sort of digital marketing, digital advertising, maybe some media buying, direct mailers, flyers, figuring out here's who our target audience is.
How to sell more stuff.
How to sell more stuff, yeah. Whereas I said, marketing is interested in how to sell more stuff. As PR, I'm interested in how can we influence more people through third-party recommendations. Whereas I think marketing is more probably first-party recommendations, and PR is third-party through the media. I think PR is very powerful, but I believe in the peso model, which is a combination of all of these different things, right? Where you paid media, earned, search, organic, own. I think, again, own media is so important. When you think about own media, what falls under that is definitely content marketing. I think content marketing is the one area where I think that actually sort of is a combination of PR and marketing if it's done properly. I think I think there needs to be more training in that area for most people to evolve.
If you've got a PR firm and you've got a marketing firm or a publicist, whatever, if you've got those two entities hired separately, how do you bring them together to be on the same? Because you just talked about it is integrated in a lot of ways. How do you integrate it? How do you make sure that those two teams are working hand in hand?
I think you need someone who's actually who's tasked with the responsibility of managing both relationships. I think if you're sort of gonna hire two respective agencies and then not like be that person that's managing them, or not hire someone, you're gonna have a problem, because what you're gonna have is people going in totally opposite direction and no one sort of reining them back in. And so to answer your question, it starts with having a creative brief and a strategy and some sort of a shared document where people can see, okay, this is what our objectives are. This is the plan. Here's how PR is going to tackle this and reach these goals. And then here's how conversely marketing is going to tackle these goals. So you can all be on the same page and see, and you can also learn, right? Like there's key insights. If I can see, oh, well, this is what they're doing from a pay-per-click standpoint, like that can give me an idea for PR that like, oh, well, maybe this is really who they want. So why don't I try something in a trade publication to reach this person? Conversely, I think marketing can probably learn a little bit from PR too. And so that starts with having transparency and having conversations of what they're both doing and check-ins around that.
Do you think, I'm trying to articulate the question, but big firms versus smaller boutique firms like yours, what's the difference in the value of each?
I think, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a smaller firm, I think the value of working with a small firm is you're always going to get more time and I think you're always going to get more value because you're not paying for antiquated things like someone else's overhead or someone else's, fancy like new office space and coffee machine and this and that, because like they're just scrappier and they don't have to pay for those things because it's a smaller firm, right?
The new office costs a lot of money.
Yes, exactly. I also think you're going to get for the same amount of money sometimes, or for less money, you're going to get someone with usually more experience, right? Because what you see with the larger agencies is this bait and switch sales process, which is we're going to take the senior person and work you to get your business and take you out, and then we're going to give you a junior person that's actually going to manage the account. I don't see a lot of the times the bait and switch with a smaller company because the person you're talking to is the person that usually services your account, right? And I think there's a massive value out of that for what you're paying and the experience you're getting for that.
I think you're going to get more technical experience with a smaller firm often.
Yes, I 100%. So, again, I'm not just saying that because I am a smaller firm. I think we see more people head in that direction, right? More people hiring virtual agencies, more people doing business with consultants that they've never even met, that they sort of work with them for years on end, right? I don't think you even have to meet someone face to face to do a lot of this work anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I think that maybe sort of larger firms think that they have some sales advantage because they can do that and they can wine and dine someone. My personal belief is I shouldn't have to wine and dine someone. I think my results should speak for themselves. And maybe you think, oh, that's this sort of millennial approach and you still need to do all of these other things. I don't think so. I think my work should speak for itself. I mean, this is probably an interesting debate that we could have about this. I don't know where you land on it. I personally have hired people that I've never met, and why do I hire? Like, whether they take me out or not, I don't really care. I'm hiring them because of what they can do.
Well, I'll say this. I grew up, working for Clear. One of my first jobs out of college, I was a radio DJ, and then figured out that I was never going to get off the midnight shift, and then started working in the corporate side of that, the marketing and sales side with Clear Channel, and and then I did some agency work after that. And I will say 20, 30 years ago when I was doing that, the wine and dine was still the model, and I sort of grew up in that sort of system, I think. But I wouldn't disagree with you now. I don't think that as people get busier and busier and busier, that I would rather, when I come to New York, spend time working on, I'm not a client, but I'd rather go out to lunch or dinner with you or other influencers or other people who I know virtually, who I maybe never have met, who we feed off each other and we help each other on LinkedIn, we help each other on these other platforms. I'd rather spend time doing that than taking a client to lunch or dinner. Because I can't think of the last time I took a client to lunch or dinner, and business hasn't suffered.
Exactly. I'm so glad you say that. I mean, I can't either. And it's not like we're, I don't think that's like a knock on us or people that aren't doing it. Also, by the way, like, I don't think most clients even have time or want to do that, right? Like, even if you ask them, would they be like, yes, let's go?
Yeah.
Are they like dying to go to lunch? No, they have their own lives and they're busy. Yes, exactly. Like, they don't really want to do it. And so I think this is like, I think that's a great and a positive direction, right? It's not like this Mad Men agency world that like you'd see in that show when it aired. I think that's changed. And the reason I say this on your show is because I think this is a positive thing for entrepreneurs or for anyone who's graduating, right? Who like may not have a lot of cash flow in the beginning, like who's worried about this. Who's worried, how can I get business and how can I get new clients if I can't take them out? like there's hope for you. You don't have to just work on being really, really good.
Yeah. And I think the other side of that is, spend more time. It doesn't negate the necessity, I think, to work on relationships.
Correct.
Right? If you're going to spend your time, I'd rather spend that hour or 2 hours a night after work working on key relationships, people that I want to facilitate a relationship with on a platform. For me, it's LinkedIn, than any other activity. I think we still have to work on our relationships, and that's an art too. When you do that online, that's a whole lot different than face to face. So, but I do think we still need to do that. I think that is essential. That's different.
Completely agree.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, I know you've got to get going. I've got to get going. We've been on it for about an hour, and I do appreciate it. This is the Power Lunch Live on LinkedIn. Now, tomorrow I'm traveling to California. We'll be in San Diego the rest of the week. I'm going to be at the MG 100, our Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches event over the weekend. We're going to be doing some pull-asides with some of my colleagues at MG 100. I think Thursday, Ryan Berman and I are going to talk about our new book. We're going to have an announcement about that. And Friday, I think we'll probably do some interviews as well. But the schedule's a little up in the air, but we're going to have some really amazing guests on this weekend. We're going to be live all weekend. So tomorrow we will be taking a break as I fly to California. And if you want to look at the schedule, the upcoming schedule for Power Lunch Live, go to powerlunch.live online. It's our website. You can check out the schedule. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for spending your time with us. Kris, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You guys have a great day.